Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted, episode 299, almost 300, and yet still the English edition. I'm Kevin Colson.
And I'm Gavin Ashenden, and it's the 12th of June, 2017.
Okay, welcome to another edition. We're into the heaps of summer, and still the world of Anglicanism is alive with more news. Normally during the summer, journalists like myself get to take a little break because people are on holiday, the press office is closed. But boy, if you look at news from England and around the world, things are kind of on fire. In fact, so much so that the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, sent a letter to all the primates saying, give me just a little bit more time. I mean, there's a song lyric coming out for this. I can think about 4 or 5 bands from the 70s who wrote songs like this, just a little bit more time. To do what? And that's what I have Gavin on to talk about, because I want to know if he's responding to something that's going to occur or something that has occurred. You and I talked about the new bishop from the... I forget what church. The Free Church was the new bishop?
The Anglican mission in England.
Okay, Anglican mission in England did one. Oh, no. I'm talking about the different one. Sorry, the one before.
You're talking about Jesmond?
Yes.
Right. So the Right Reverend Jonathan Pryke, who's curate or senior minister at Jesmond Parish Church, who was consecrated by Caesar bishops from the Anglican Church in South Africa.
And that happened 4 weeks ago.
About that, yeah.
And just this Friday, GAFCON, the ACNA, have announced that they're going to consecrate a new bishop on European soil. His name is Andrew Lyons.
Andy Lyons.
And they're going to do that in response to the Scottish Church deciding to change their canons for marriage, disallowing the words man and woman, making marriage between anyone and anything. So in response to that, Justin published a letter, or was it in response to that? Because everything happened on June 8th and 9th, but this letter I see is dated June 1st. And I have an Englishman on to tell me how English people write letters. Is he responding to the first consecration or the second one, or is this an unrelated type letter?
Kevin, we're in the middle of a chess match, and like so many, for those of our friends who play chess, we've had the opening gambits, and we're probably now in mid game, with looking towards what the end game is going to be. So at the moment, we're following a series of pre-planned moves. Everyone knew what was going to happen in roundabout now. We've known for some time that the Scottish Episcopal Church was very likely to change its marriage canons and join the Americans and the Canadians. We knew that it was very likely that GAFCON would want to say, okay, in the British Isles, this is a first. Let's put our plan into operation. We knew that it was very likely that as there's a vacuum of Orthodox Christianity, Orthodox archbishops and bishops will want to fill it. It just depends on where the vacuum appears. Many of us think that since the movement to consecrate women to the episcopate in the Church of England, that has removed them from Orthodox Christianity, because Orthodox Christianity never ever did that. And it's part of a chain of events which leads us straight on to gay marriage and to other complications with gender issues. So it's just a matter of in what order things are going to happen and who the various people are. So Archbishop Welby knew very well this was going to happen, and I guess he's got that letter and probably a couple more already written, just ready to send when the moment comes.
Well, he mentions border crossing, and he starts off the letter, listen, the Bible, the New Testament, Ephesians calls us unity beyond all reason. And I need to remind you that in the Nicene tradition, we don't border cross. That's wrong. It's worse than heresy. And you and I know it's not worse than heresy, because the Nicene tradition is that You don't border cross for race. You don't border cross for any other issue except heresy, in which you are demanded
Yes.
and commanded to border cross.
Yes,
Some
absolutely
think
right.
that Scotland certainly is into heresy. The Church of England is as close to it as you can get without, it's touching the electric fence here. Ooh, that doesn't hurt too bad, And so we're here to the point where are we to the point where we can safely, easily assume that we can cross borders? And I think GAFCON's decided it's time.
It certainly has, but Kevin, before we even get to that stage, there's a strange element in this letter writing which I'm really finding it hard to get my head round. Lambeth Palace is full of very competent theologians. In the old days, when I was a friend of some people in the old regime, I would go in and out of Lambeth. I'd bump into some very eminent and competent people, and you knew that the wheels were turning at the highest level. What I don't understand about this recent letter is that it just looks to be as though it's performing a long way before underneath the highest levels. For example, you quite rightly said that we know that border crossing was outlawed by the Nicene canons, unless there was an issue of orthodoxy and truth. Now, the Archbishop has said that we have two canons here, canons 15 and 16, and that if you read those, you'll be reminded particularly that this doesn't allow border crossing. Actually, they're nothing to do with it at all. If you read this canon 15 says you mustn't have one bishop moved from one see to another, which he himself is in breach of the moment he went from Durham to Canterbury,
That's right,
because
yeah.
they didn't promote people in those days. And the other one is what happens when somebody asks to come back into the church. In those days, it was about people who had refused to testify for Jesus, and there was a big argument about whether people who'd refused martyrdom would be allowed back into the church or not. And Canon 16 is about that. Well, there are martyrs today, but liberal Anglicans are not amongst them, and you wonder why he would have written this in this particular letter. I mean, does he think that by mentioning the Nicene canons, all the primates of the Anglican Communion will say, "Oh, he must know what he's talking about"? I'm afraid some of them will be competent theologians and competent church historians, and if they're not, they have Wikipedia. So not only does he quote the wrong canons, not only does he misunderstand the issues that drove our forefathers at the time of the Nicene controversies, and particularly over Arius. And many of us think that Justin Welby himself is neo-Arian. He doesn't give to Jesus the authority Jesus and his teaching ought to have, or he wouldn't diminish his teaching on marriage. Anyone who treated Jesus as the eternal Logos couldn't begin to say, yeah, well, I don't think we need to worry quite too much about what he taught about a man and a woman being the raw material for marriage. So it's a strange letter, and it's not one that makes you sit back and take a deep breath of instant respect.
No, we're in a position that we're not been in before because finally there was a response. You've been involved in Anglican polity long enough to know that when things were going really bad here in America and Canada, the clergy and the bishops reached out to Rowan Williams, who promised depot, who promised a panel of reference, who said, I don't want to be a magisterium, but it's not like I don't want to help. And so I talked to many clergy and many bishops who hand wrote letters to Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, expecting a response. Some got responses that said, okay, we've added you to the pile, we'll get to you in a little while. And some got no response. And now we are in a situation where the church itself, the Anglican Church of England, is still not a respondent to problems, but GAFCON is. GAFCON has said we're going to put a bishop in England, one of our own. I know, having been to England many times, that England is not just one thought amongst bishops. When you travel to Ireland, when you travel to other parts of the UK, there's different dynamics, different relationships, almost a different ethos in how people respond to each other and respond to the gospel. I know that the Scots think a little differently than those in London, and those in London think a little differently than those in Ireland. Can we just drop an English bishop? What time is it there?
I'm sorry, it's 7 o'clock.
It is 7 o'clock. Can we just drop any old English bishop into the aisle and expect there to be a solution?
If what you're asking me is, have GAFCON done a really good job in appointing an Orthodox bishop and parachuting him in to Scotland, I think I have questions about that. I completely understand the importance of providing Orthodox oversight for a vacuum of orthodoxy. I think if I was a Scotsman, and I was an Orthodox Scots priest, and I know several of them in the Scottish Episcopal Church, I think I would have preferred GAFCON to come to me quietly and say, do you need oversight? And if you needed oversight, what kind of man would you find most helpful to give you this oversight? Mm-hmm. And if that happened, and I'm wrong, then I'm sorry. but at the moment, I don't think that was the chain of events. And so it's certainly true that in a situation where there are complexities of nationality and complexities of churchmanship and spirituality, it would at least be courteous to make sure you had the best possible ingredient. However, having said that, we don't live in a perfect world. No. And the GAFCON primates have decided that, if you like, we've moved to another stage of the chess match, and they've made a move. It's a good move. They've provided an Orthodox bishop at a point where a church became heterodox. Well, that's fine. I think one of the things that's going to happen is that as this increases, as the moves develop, and particularly as the situation changes in England, one of the things the Orthodox are going to try and do is put together a range of bishops who provide episcopal oversight. So at the moment, for example, we have a panel of four. We have Jonathan Pryke from Jesmond, and we have Andy Limes, who's been presented by GAFCON. But we also have Bishop John Fenwick of the Free Church of England, and Correct. His splendid colleague Bishop Paul. Mm-hmm. So we have four, all of whom are Orthodox Anglican bishops and ready to give oversight. And I think one of the things that will happen is as the chess match develops, we'll probably have a few more from one place or another before long, and then Orthodox priests and congregations will look to them and say, I'd like to develop a relationship of spiritual oversight and friendship with you, please. So we won't be doing geography, we'll be doing spiritual compatibility. And although that's not the way things have been done in the past, what we're really doing is trying to shore up the church to make sure that Orthodox believers have the right kind of support. I was at a meeting the other day when some of the people who are thinking about these things got together, and one of the most admirable priests in England, whom I've admired for a long time, said, I really need a faithful Orthodox bishop to relate to. Wow, well, at some point, he said it in a very heartfelt way. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is great, you do. And at some point, you're going to get one. So, okay, we've taken GAFCON have taken the first steps. They may not be ideal, but we're in a developing situation. And undoubtedly, if we look at Nicene practice, it is the right thing to do to provide Orthodox bishops when a diocese has a vacancy for Orthodox episcopacy. And in the United Kingdom, that's what's happening more and more.
Yeah, you mentioned it's not a perfect world. And this is the first time GAFCON has done this. And, sure. It's going to be a learning experience from both sides, how the Church of England responds, how Scotland responds, how the Orthodox, the Scottish Anglican Network responds to all this. And if it's a success, I have heard rumors that GAFCON may do this in a multi-bishop way, not just a single bishop parachuted into Scotland. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how this works, and if this is new paradigm for the future of the church, that GAFCON has set up a structure where your province has a problem, we're there. Your diocese is unsupported by the province, we're there. And it's going to keep me busy with news, that's for sure. Gavin,
well, it is.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, I was just. Can I add one more thing?
Oh yes, of course. I always want to. I just want to shut down, close down, go. Take my vacation. Of course, Gavin. What would you like to add?
Well, see, in the next moves that are coming, one of the things that Lambeth want to avoid doing is presenting the kind of crisis that the synod vote in the Scottish Episcopal Church has presented. The letter that he wrote is designed to forestall the next stage of the game, and the next stage of the game is bishops in England. And the question will be, at what point is there an Orthodox vacancy? Now, we already know that there are some highly provocative liberal bishops, heterodox. The bishop, for example, of Liverpool, who has got a close relationship with a woman bishop from Tech, who's brought in for his suffragan, who is constantly engaging in pro-LGBTIQ and the rest rhetoric.
I think this week we actually hit Z. They want to finish out.
We may be going around again. But one of the things that's happened this week, to give people, Justin Welby said in his letter, I want to point out there's been no change in any liturgy or any doctrine, as if to say, so cut me some slack. What's all this fuss about heterodoxy? But one of the things he did this week was to give some Lambeth awards out, and one was to a lady who I'm sure is extremely nice, called Vicky Beeching, and she's a kind of person that I'm not terribly familiar with. She's a worship leader. I understand that in certain evangelical circles, to do the liturgy properly, you need a warm-up act, and these people do
guitar, 12-string guitar, distortion on the electric. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So here we have a liturgical warm-up act of an emotionally charged kind. This is great, and I'm sure they're very well received in certain churchmanships. But Vicky Beeching was a leading evangelical who came out as a lesbian and then began to campaign against Christian marriage. And Justin Welby, in a citation giving her an award this week, said she campaigned against Christian marriage and she's lost a lot of Christian friends in doing that. And we want to be here to give her an award for various attributes. Well, to say that the Church of England hasn't changed liturgy and doctrine on the one hand, which is true, but at the same time to carry on a campaign of LGBT affirmation is to be frankly disingenuous. So whilst it's not offering, whilst this award to Vicky Beeching is not the moment when we say the Church of England has moved from orthodoxy to heterodoxy on this matter, there are going to be a slow accumulation of these kind of gestures, which in the end will amount to an invitation for the Orthodox to say they've avoided crossing an obvious red line or an obvious river. But there's been a change of atmosphere, a change of orientation, to use an apt word, certainly a change of direction. And there will come a point when it's quite clear that Orthodox oversight is required in a way independently of a synodical vote.
Yeah. I need to assure Justin Welby and the House of Bishops right now in the Church of England that when it's all said and done and you're there at the judgment seat, God is not going to look and say, or Christ, and say, boy, you were good on paper. Everything you did was just swell on paper. I don't think that's going to occur. Well, we have run out of time. I do want to thank you for your time. I'm headed down to Dallas. I'm going to try and get something with you early next week with some of the more changes. And it's going to be one of the summers when we get to record. Gavin, thank you again. I'm Kevin Carlson.
I'm Gavin Ashenden, and this was one episode before 300. 299. God bless you all.